I scare you? I don't actually care. I'm in it for the love of the game. Robert Eggers' 2024 adaptation of Nosferatu, a movie warning you to never give the weird guy with facial hair a chance. This is not a summary video, but in case you haven't seen it, I'll give you a brief synopsis. Germany, 1838. Young Ellen makes a plea to ease her loneliness, which in turn wakes an ancient creature known as Count Orlok, aka the curse of Nosferatu. Time skip. Ellen and Thomas are married. Thomas sets off for real estate business in Transylvania, and Ellen is left in unfit hands to handle breaking this ancient curse. Also, Willem Dafoe. However, this is more than a monster movie about awesome mustaches and dangerous crushes. This is actually a story about female sexuality. In Linda Williams' essay, When the Woman Looks, Williams posits, it may well be then that the power and potency of the monster body in many classic horror films should not be interpreted as an eruption of the normally repressed animal sexuality of the civilized male, the monster as double for the male viewer and the character in the film, but as the feared power and potency of a different kind of sexuality, the monster as double for the women. So, let's chat about how Nosferatu is actually an allegory for desire, by first looking at female sexuality and the devices used to oppress. Then let's discuss the implications of demonic sex, before finally exploring some symbolism. This story is set in 1800s Germany, a time and place where women were unquestionably subordinate to men, socially and sexually. Sex was only a means of procreation. Women weren't allowed to seek pleasure, to pursue desire. At one point, Ellen is seen breaking down and crying, a testament to the shame that she carries with her, deeming herself unclean. Anna Harding, married to Friedrich and a dear friend to Ellen, is such an important storytelling device in this story because of what she represents versus what Ellen represents. The mirror image between Ellen and Anna is fascinating because here we have Anna, who doesn't even want to kiss her husband in public. She very much so subscribes to the societal scripts of the time. She represents purity and also godliness. And then we have Ellen, who has this inherent darkness within her. Both women experience shame, just at very different levels. The ways they respond to this shame differ as well. Despite trying not to, Ellen walks towards this darkness, whereas Anna runs away from it. Traditional vampire movies are anchored in an ancient demonic man pursuing and seducing a vulnerable woman, the object of his desire. That's why Ellen's story is so fantastically disruptive, because she also desires this demon. In fact, the focus is on her desire. We also rarely see a man in such a vulnerable position that Thomas is throughout the movie. His circumstances are not within his hands. He is completely at the mercy of Nosferatu. Ellen is not this weak, damsel-esque maiden in need of saving, like at the surface you're made to think. This movie uses melancholy as an expression of sexual weakness, a correlation that dates back to the 1500s.
He is my shame! He is my melancholy!
According to Zeb Torrizi's book, Sexuality and the Unnatural, women were more susceptible and vulnerable to melancholy, or at least less able to resist its effects. Black bile was analogous to demonic possession. For demonologists, this tendency, combined with women's carnal nature, made women particularly susceptible to demonic sexual influence. Thus, sexuality, particularly women's sexuality, were linked explicitly with melancholy. The melancholic woman became the ideal portal for the supernatural penetration of the natural world. Wow. It's also interesting the role Nosferatu played in Thomas's story versus Ellen's. The devil was said to control men far more than women. Thomas visiting him, being inside his castle, being in such close proximity to him, whereas Ellen isn't in close proximity to him throughout most of the movie. There was no connection made to Nosferatu controlling her. She was just said to be sexually weak. She was just melancholic. In this way, portraying Ellen as melancholic was actually portraying the way society views the sexually promiscuous woman. Demonic, devilish, evil, dangerous. Count Orlok is more like a demon than a vampire, an incubus that has followed Ellen since her childhood. He is the shadow of her sexuality, a representation of her repressed desires. I spy another connection here. It's between Nosferatu and diabolical sex. Diabolical sex, meaning the sexual congress between people and the devil or his demons, cannot go unmentioned when discussing the story of Nosferatu and Ellen. Just as vampire stories are used as metaphors for sexuality, the bite representing sexual intercourse, diabolical sex is a device used to represent desire. This movie is a beautiful wombo combo of both. And sexual congress between women and demon has roots dating back to the 1400s. Again, according to the book. The devil came to women when they were longing for many things. Power, marriage, freedom, money are a few examples of unmet desires of women at the time. It's clear that our protagonist, Ellen, longs for something outside of the confines of proper society. Before marrying, she's described as inordinately, cataclysmically sad. Though her marriage to Thomas provides her new hope and meaning, she still yearns for this figure of death, cloaked in black. She yearns for darkness. She actively lusts for him, calls him. This is why Count Orlok is a representation of what Ellen yearns for. The curse of Nosferatu is an expression of her repressed desires. An account of a Spanish traveler who travels across Latin America in the 1800s. The account goes that the traveler accused a woman of having sex with the devil. He describes seeing her having sexual intercourse with an incubus, breathing heavily and making movements, as though she were having sex with a man, even though no man could be seen. Sound familiar? Throughout the movie, when Ellen is struck by melancholia, there are scenes where Ellen gyrates in this exact way, depicted sex without a second party, as if they were invisible. I think this is symbolically, and later physically, the convergence of woman and monster. After Thomas embarks on his perilous journey to Transylvania, Ellen begins exemplifying signs of melancholia again, thus displaying the relationship between Ellen and Count Orlok as one and the same. Now, I want to talk about the flowers that we see throughout the movie. Purple lilacs appear at the most important times throughout the movie. At the beginning, the flowers that Thomas gives her could represent first love and purity. Side note, notice how she's holding the bouquet in front of her like a dead person would in a coffin? Subtle. This could be true, but looking deeper into the florography at the time, a deeper meaning is revealed. Florography assigns meaning to certain flowers, a practice that began during the 1800s Victorian era. Lilacs were said to represent first love and purity. So this parting gift represents their pure love and Thomas's devotion. When Ellen wanders outside in a trance-like state, attempting to call the Count, she's surrounded by lilac bushes. Not only do the flowers represent love, but they also represent obsession. Yeah, chew on that. Enclosed by the flower, we can glean that Count Orlok's presence in Ellen's life is leaving a profound impact on her. An unrelenting shadow. However, not long after Thomas gives her the flowers at first, Ellen says something interesting. The scent of lilacs was strong in the rain, and when I reached the altar, you weren't there. Standing before me, in all black, was death. But I was so happy. So very happy. We exchanged vows, we embraced, and when we turned around, everyone was dead. Father and everyone. The stench of their bodies was horrible. It overwhelmed the lilacs, and But I had never been so happy as that moment, as I held hands with death. The final scene where lilacs make an appearance in the film is the final scene, which the director, Robert Eggers, has said is based off of the German artist Hans Balding's painting, Death in the Maiden. This scene depicts the aftermath of Ellen sacrificing herself to break the curse. What do we see here in this scene? Dead and dried up lilacs. Dr. Eberhardt, Willem Dafoe, places them around Ellen in the final scene, perhaps as a final act of respect? This could symbolize a lot of things. Count Orlok's obsession coming to an end. It could symbolize Ellen reclaiming her own sexuality, her own choice, her own agency. The color grading in this movie also tells a fascinating story. It's filmed in hues of gray and blue throughout the entire movie until the final scene, which casts a warm glow from the sun's rays onto both Ellen and Orlok. The sun kills them both as they have consummated, they have become one, but it also casts a positive light, literal light, on Ellen's final act of the movie. She is finally free from the shame and guilt that has traumatized her throughout her entire life. Lily Rose Depp, who plays Ellen, says herself in an interview that Ellen is not a victim of the story.
It's not so simple as like this young woman who is like pursued or haunted by this monster that she like wants nothing to do with. Like there is a real yearning coming from her side as well. I don't think she's a victim at all because she's kind of calling the shots the entire time. And he, you know, there's a power play there. He's like trying to overtake her in this way and you know, destroy the lives of those around her. But she calls out to him and she, you know, makes the sacrifice that only she can make. She has a great deal of agency in this story that I feel like we haven't seen in you know, iterations of the past.
Roxana Hadidi writes in her 2024 article, Nosferatu's final moment is an act of consent. Ellen's final act isn't a swooning surrender, it's a springboard for an exploration of consent, in which she can reclaim her sexual past and strip it of its original humiliation and contrition. She has a considerable amount of agency in this iteration that we have not seen before in past ones. I freaking love this movie, and the information about female sexuality that we can glean from it is fascinating! I'm glad that Eggers decided not to shy away from this facet of the film. Instead, he chose to face it head on. Robert Eggers' 2024 retelling of Nosferatu shifts the protagonism to Ellen Hutter, who, despite what you may think at first watch, is far from weak and susceptible. Her story is one of desire, lust, reclaiming sexuality, and shedding yourself free from shame.